Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first webinar of 2019 from AlicoSoft. I see that the numbers are still climbing rapidly for people joining. We had quite a few registrants for today's webinar, so I'm going to pause for 30, 45 seconds, let those folks continue joining, and then we will jump right into the webinar. So I'll see you in 30 seconds. Good morning again, and welcome to AlicoSoft's first webinar of 2019. We're excited to offer our webinar series again for 2019. I can tell you that we're particularly excited about the fact that we'll be expanding our webinar series from monthly to twice a month in 2019. That's going to allow us to open up and dig into a number of additional topics: cost and resource loading, risk analysis, line of balance, and I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the webinar about the upcoming webinars that you can look for and sign up for here very shortly. We plan our webinars for the second and fourth Thursday of every month, with exceptions for trade shows, conferences, and holidays, of course. So that's typically when you can look to find them. We do them at 11 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Our Powerproject office is located just south of Denver, Colorado. So we're in the Mountain Time Zone. So let's jump into our webinar, but first I do have a couple of housekeeping issues to take care of. So you probably have noticed that you're all muted. We are recording today's webinar, and to maintain good audio quality, we certainly put everyone on mute. That doesn't mean you can't participate, however. So I draw your attention, if you haven't used GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar previously, to the GoToWebinar control panel. Look for the questions pane just to the left of the word questions. You'll find a little drop down. You can open it up and type in a question at any point during the webinar. Now, we'll be answering all the questions at the end of the webinar, time permitting. If we run out of time, and occasionally we do, we will answer your question via email, so don't worry. I would also like to highlight something that was mentioned in the webinar description, and that is that everyone will be receiving a copy of, or a link to, a copy of the recording for today's webinar. So if you find yourself short on time, or you'd like to jump back and watch a couple of the steps that maybe we move through rather quickly because of time, you can take a look at the recording and view that again. That will come in an email you'll receive a couple of hours after the webinar. Also in that email will be a link to a trial copy of our software. It's a 14-day fully functional trial copy, so everything you see us do in Powerproject during the webinar, you can do in the trial version. It's not limited in any way, except for that 14-day length of time that you can use it. That's from when you install, not when you download the executable. So just wait till you have a little free time. If you run out of time on the 14-day, we're really happy to help you with the purchase of the software. So let's begin today's webinar. My name is Jim Dawkins. I'll be your host and moderator today. My background is in the AEC industry as an engineer, practicing engineer consultant, and in sales and marketing, helping a number of software companies over time. And I live in the Denver area. Our presenter today is Megan DePody. Megan comes to us from 10 years experience in industry as a scheduler and a project manager, and acts as our senior consultant in the US and is our product expert for Powerproject. So Megan's going to be the one who's walking you through some of the options today. Today's webinar is brought to you by Alicosoft. Alicosoft is a global provider of software solutions for the AEC industry, and it may surprise you to know that Powerproject, one of the tools we'll be talking about today, has been around just as long as that other tool we'll be talking about, Oracle Primavera. And that surprises a lot of people. This is a tested solution over decades. It's specifically built for construction. Purpose-built software really ensures that you get all the functions to support the business needs. You'll find that other software, other scheduling software, may not have been built specifically for construction's more general purpose, and that's terrific. But if you're in construction, it might be nice to have something that is built just for your needs. The software is sold in 54 countries around the world. We translate it into 9 languages. Many of you know the software is produced in the UK, so we actually translate it into American. For those that understand the spelling might be different. The software is supported by a network of solution providers. Our resellers are experts in construction scheduling. That's really important. Scheduling is an acquired skill. Many of the project managers in construction today have been provided education, maybe as a part of their bachelor's degree around scheduling. Maybe they've attended a class or two, but because they may or may not use it on a regular basis, they need a lot of support. It'd be nice to find a tool for which you have that local support, and that's what our reseller network in the US provides. We have this is the other part that might be a little surprising to you, over 100,000 users worldwide. And while the number in the US is clearly smaller than that global number, it's growing very rapidly. Well over, now we're on pace to over 1,000 users per year. So we're going to be catching them soon. So one of the questions I always get is who uses Powerproject? And and I should certainly call out the fact that you'll hear it referred to as ASTA Powerproject and Powerproject. Alicosoft is the parent company. Powerproject is the new product name. We've migrated from ASTA Powerproject, but lots of people still call it ASTA Powerproject. And we are a tool that's used by contractors large and small. Some global contractors are making use of Powerproject for a lot of great reasons that we'll delve into, but we also have some very small contractors or subcontractors that are making use of it. Our topic today is about the melding of a couple of different worlds. While Primavera and Powerproject compete for the same market space, it doesn't mean they can't work together. And so our topic today is about the use of potentially both. The extent to which you use both is up to you to get the best of both worlds. Now, what do I mean by the best of both worlds? So I think for a lot of us, there's software that you want to use, and then there's software that you need to use. Now, those may be one and the same. So you may be of the mind that the tool you use is specified by the owner, maybe Microsoft Project is specified, and you're happy with that. That's terrific. You may be a advocate of Primavera. Again, that's terrific. And if the owner's specifying that, then you have no challenges. But it may be that you might want to add something else to your tool belt. Let's first talk about, before I postulate why you'd want to do that, let's understand that I'd need to have a couple of simple requirements in place before I could. So I need to be able to meet the owner's specification in terms of file format. and I need to know that that is rock solid. So it might not be, today's topic is around Primavera, so an XER might be an XML that the owner is requesting, but many are still requiring the XER proprietary format from Primavera. So I need to be able to provide that to them, regardless of what I use, right? And why would I want to add something else to that? I need to satisfy that need. So that's what we'll talk about today, while ensuring that the first requirement can be met as well and is in place. And by the way, while we're talking about Primavera, certainly if the owner requires a Microsoft project format, an XML, or an MPP, if you have project installed, we can provide either to the owner as well. So we'll talk about the case for adding Powerproject to your tool belt in this world that's dominated, in many cases, by one of two requirements: a Microsoft Project XML file or a Primavera XER file. Can I provide one of those and still use the tool that I might want to use? And why might I want to use that? Well, the first thing you need to know is that Powerproject, as I mentioned previously, has been around as long as Primavera. So this is a tool that's used around the globe. It's well accepted, market leader in a number of different countries, and a growing market presence in the United States. It's a full CPM tool, full forward and backward pass, which is not true for some aspects of Microsoft Project. So it's a robust, it's a complete solution. We provide an enterprise version of the software as well. So all of those requirements are in place. You certainly saw some impressive logos, some very large companies making use of the software. So now let's move to why I might use it. Well, as you'll see, Project is specifically designed to be a great deal easier to use. So we hear over and over again that people have to be trained and retrained on Primavera. I think that's in part because of the complexity of the tool, but in part because of the way we use the tool. You may, if you're a project manager and not a full-time scheduler, you're not using it day in, day out. You forget where things are. You forget how to accomplish something that you do infrequently. Something that's easier to use would reduce that need for additional and repetitive training. It also means you can create a schedule much faster. You can modify a schedule much faster, progress it. And it's far less expensive than other tools because it's licensed for contractors. And what does that mean? That means that we offer, as some tools have offered at times in their history, a concurrent licensing model. If you're not using a software all day long, if it's not your Outlook, for instance, that's open all day long, why would you want to pay for a full license? Why don't we share a license? And that's what concurrent allows you to do. And you can get a very, very cost-effective solution licensed the way you use it. So today, we're going to walk through some of the functions of Powerproject to include meeting our XER requirement. We'll make the case for why Powerproject will reduce your training time. I would ask you to open your mind to perhaps a different methodology. Megan will talk a little bit about the way that projects are traditionally created in Primavera and how you might consider an alternative. And so Powerproject, while we can manage both ways, we can do it the same way you've done it in Primavera. You won't see quite the same benefits if you do it if you try to use Powerproject like Primavera. You can, but you might as well make use of the functions that are added there that aren't available in Primavera. So with that, I'm going to ask Megan to jump in, and I'm going to transfer control to Megan. Otherwise, this will be a content light presentation. Megan, are you there?
I am, and hopefully you can see my screen.
I can.
Perfect. All right, so as Jim mentioned, our goal is to be leading construction project scheduling tool worldwide. As a leading tool, we offer full interoperability between P6 and Powerproject. So I'm going to show you and make the case that today that Powerproject is by far the easiest to use tool, and it still works seamlessly with other schedule file formats. So just right off the bat, to kind of preface a couple of things, I want to let you know I am using a relatively simple schedule. I know that most of the schedules you guys use are much more complex than this. It will work the same whether you have 100 activities or 10,000 activities. For ease of use and showing to an audience, it's a relatively simple schedule. So I just wanted to start with that. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to just go ahead and show you how a schedule here looks going between Powerproject and P6, just to kind of get that off our backs and clear the air, and then we'll get into some more specifics about why Powerproject is an easier to use tool. So first of all, it's not an export, it's just a save as, and if you're opening an XER, it's just the file open. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here. All I need to do is change my file type. As you can see, we have several different file types we can save to. P3, we can actually save to P3 still. We have our Primavera XER, Microsoft Project, as well as previous versions of Powerproject and CSV files, things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and save to an XER. Click Save. There are some options here. For the most part, just about everybody uses the defaults. If when you get into it and start using it, you can check those out a little bit, but 95% at least of the time, the defaults work for most people. So I'm going to come in here to Primavera. I will do an import here. And I'm going to just sticking with all the defaults in P6. So see what it looks like creating a new project. P6 takes a minute to import. As you saw, Powerproject is a relatively instantaneous, save and open. Just it takes as long as it would to open a, Word document or any other file. And same with saving. So now if I come to my tasks here, I'm going to summarize these a little bit. So we can do a quick comparison that our dates here for all these summary levels match up. If we expand it and look at individual tasks, they match up as well. Dates, the tasks that have actuals, etc. One thing you'll notice is that none of my no formatting comes over. So there's not a, within P6, there's not a file. I can't control how the person who opens my XER file will see it. It depends on the layouts and things that they have, or I would have to send a layout separately. With Powerproject, however, the layouts, we call them views, templates, are all saved within the project file. So if I can control how people see it, I can send them a file and have it set to open on a specific view, or I can tell them to open, hey, look at this view, this is what you want to see. So it can help make sure everybody's looking at the same things in the same way. So now that we've done the quick check there, I'm going to go ahead and add some more progress to this so you can see how that looks going back and forth as well. You'll notice I have this green line here. That is my, in P6 it would be the data date. We call it a progress period. Here it's for the end of January. So I'm going to, again, preface. I know that what I'm going to do here for updating is not standard or best practices or really a good idea in general. I'm just trying to kind of quickly add some progress so that you can see what it looks like going back and forth. But you can, in multiple ways, we have multiple detailed ways to progress every task exactly how you want to make sure it's accurate as can be. So I'm going to go ahead and just take all of these tasks that are either in progress or not started up until the green line here, and I can do a quick progress up to and just say those are all complete. So it's just scheduling them as they were scheduled and they're 100% complete. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F9. It's the same in both programs. You can see that I'm updating as of January 31st. It reschedules for me. You can see that foundations before I'd had to some of those tasks scheduled before the end of January. It pushed those back in relation to my other tasks as well. So now that I have done that, I'm going to go ahead and again do a save as. An XCR. Give a new name here. Again, I'm going to stick with the defaults. Now if I go back into P6, I can import this one. Again, I'm just clicking through, leaving everything at the default. I am choosing to update the existing project. I could also, same as I would anything else in P6, I could import it as a separate project file as well. So you'll see that some of these, that the information came over, it's not quite right here. If we look at it, some of it looks a little funky or is behind the data date. That's because even though it brought in my information, it hasn't actually rescheduled yet. P6 needs to do its own thinking. So again, I will hit F9. I can see that my data date came over with the file, so it's set to go. So I can go ahead and hit schedule. And there we go. So I can see here we've got same dates again. Everything matches up. So it's a seamless transition between the two. Again, it works the same if I open an XCR in Powerproject. It looks the same as it would as far as dates and whatnot. Look the same as it would if I was stumbling over my words here. It looks the same as it would in P6 if I open it here. The only thing that's different, obviously, is coloring, formatting, things of that nature. So now that we have kind of jumped that hurdle, you've seen that things match up both directions. I'm going to stick in Powerproject here for the rest of the session. So one of the biggest benefits that we hear about and that I find with Powerproject is that there are many different ways to get your schedule created quickly and easily, that schedulers spend less time on data entry and getting the information into the software, so much less time doing that so that they can spend more time on what I call the thinking parts of scheduling and actually verifying that their schedule makes sense and that their logic ties are good and that it's as realistic and good a schedule as possible, rather than spending all of their time just getting the information in. So I'm going to jump real quick to a new file here, show you how you would start from scratch. So if I come in here and do a file new, it's just setting up a new file. So I don't have an enterprise hierarchy that I need to set up. I can just start a new schedule however I would like. A couple of ways you can do this. You can use a template. Templates can have as much or as little information as you want. They can have all all your activities. They can have standard resources, costs, hierarchy, or WBS. All of those things can be within your templates so that when you're starting out, they have already been created for you. I can also do a new from existing. And this is for those of you who, and I know we're out there, I used to do it, who, when I have a new project, I would go find a previous schedule I had done that was of a similar type of a building. I would do a save as and then open it up and use that as my starting point. This is essentially skipping the save as part for you. It kind of does that for you. You tell it which file you want to start from. The cool thing about this that I find very helpful is that if the schedule that you choose to use as your starting point has any actualized quantities or costs or dates, it will pop up a screen that just says, this schedule has actuals. Do you want to remove those? Yes or no? And you can choose. So if you choose yes, it will take all of that information. It will stay the same. So it will be the as-built, durations, dates, etc. But it won't have any of the actualized information. So it gives you a kind of more realistic starting point than it would otherwise, and it saves you the time of going back and removing all of that actual progress. So I've got this here. This is created from a template. So my template includes, these are resources, codes, calendars, all of that is saved within my template. So real quick, I'm going to use the term WBS. You guys, I'm sure all know what it is if you're P6 users. In Powerproject, it's more commonly known as either your project hierarchy or your natural order. So I'm going to be calling it your hierarchy more, but it's synonymous with the WBS. So don't want to confuse you here. So in P6, the kind of standard practice is to go in and create your WBS and then add tasks to that. I can do that here a couple of different ways. I can click here and just add a child here, give it a name, and say maybe structure. I can add secondary ones to that, above or below. Maybe let's call it, I can spell, exterior. I can add, sub-levels to that. So that's under structure, so maybe we'll call it concrete. Now, as you can see, when I'm clicking around here, this acts as a kind of auto filter. So if I click on any of these, right now they're all empty, but I would see whichever tasks are in that. So I don't have to create a filter for my different sections of my hierarchy. It's already built in. And then I can go in and add tasks in here. So it can be done the way you are probably used to doing it. Now, I think, and hopefully, when I was a P6 scheduler, I think wouldn't it be great if you could just put the tasks in kind of the order I have them or the order I think they should go, and then almost semi-automatically create a WBS. And, obviously you need to validate this, but the better news here, the better part is that I can also reorganize it as very easily if I decide to resequence the activities or the sections, or that I missed activities, or that I put things in the wrong section. I did that a lot when I was a scheduler. I regularly had to reorganize, or we would think we're going to be moving east to west and we would change that, so I have to resequence my tasks. And I would always get frustrated because WBS isn't very flexible in P6. So I'm going to show you that that is not always the case here in Powerproject, and that you can do your work in a different way than you may be used to, but that it allows you more flexibility and I think a better, not only ease of use, but kind of better use of your time. So first I need some activities. I can draw them. I've heard people say, whoop, I was not paying attention there and went super big, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to actually look at where I'm talking here, but as I draw this, we get comments that people think, well, drawing it's not very precise. It can be as precise as it would be entering in the spreadsheet. As you can see, this pop-up shows me the days that I'm drawing at with my duration. Now, obviously, it's not going to stay on this date. As soon as I hit reschedule, it will move back to my data date. But it can be, like I said, just as accurate as it would be entering in a spreadsheet. And I find by doing it this way, I can kind of see where I think they should be in relation to each other before I add my logic, which I find sometimes can be helpful, especially as being a very visual person. But again, if you like doing it in the spreadsheet and want to keep doing that, that is 100% okay as well. But I tend to like this kind of more flexible, graphic-friendly approach here. So now we obviously need logic. I can draw my logic in again. And as you see, when I draw it, it shows me my start and finish. It shows me if I have any lag in there. So I'm going to show here too if I want maybe a 2-day lag from the start of this task to here. It shows me that in the pop-up so I know exactly what I'm doing. One thing I want to highlight with lag that ends up being particularly helpful, I think, as projects progress is that our lag here is showing as a 2-day lag. I can also do a percentage-based lag. So I can say that when my framing is 30% complete, I can start my roughing. And the reason this can be beneficial is, maybe I started with framing was 10 days, and I said, okay, 3 days in, 30%, I could start my rough-in. Well, what happens if the framers say, you know what, we got this extra crew, we can do it in 6 days now. Well, now if I start 3 days in, I'm halfway. So in theory, I could probably start rough-in earlier. So I either need to, when I change my duration for framing, go in and change my lag to match, or, which is how you previously do it if you have it by days, but with percentage, it would automatically update and still reflect that 30%. It would just be 30% of 7 days instead of 10. So that's a unique feature that I find very helpful, and I've heard that a lot of others do as well. Now, I have plenty of colleagues who like to see their relationships displayed in the spreadsheet. Totally acceptable. We can do that here. For ease of use here, I'm showing line numbers. It can be task IDs or names or anything else. I also have it split into 2 columns, specifying which information I want in which column, because I find it a lot clearer than, especially once you get a lot of relationships, having a list of the relationships and the details. Task IDs can be a little confusing to look at. So by choosing to separate them, I find it to be clear. I can put all of this information in the same column. Again, the columns within Powerproject are very, very flexible, which is something that I find can be very helpful because I can make it look exactly how I want and show the information that I want to show. And again, I can create my logic. If I don't like drawing it, I can create it in a spreadsheet. I can bring up properties boxes and do it in there. So again, there are a lot of options to really make the schedule work for you in the way you want it to. So one feature here that as you get going, as you get your information in, one of the things you may have heard us talk about is the drag and drop functionality. So all that is here is the ability to add calendars, resources, cost codes, activity codes to tasks just by dragging and dropping. So I can still, again, do all of these things in the spreadsheet if I add the column for it, but I don't have to. If I want to real quick make a change and I don't want to have to open the column or go through and open the properties for these different ones, I can make a quick change. So let's say that I want these 3 activities to have a different calendar. I can just do a shift click and then say these are going to be a 6-day calendar. So I can just drag that over. When I change a calendar, it's going to bring up a box that says either your dates or your duration are going to change because you have different work days. You can select to not have that warning pop up again. I like it because it reminds me that I need to think about that. As you can see, those bars shrunk down a little bit, but those tasks now have different calendars. So it's a very quick and easy way to assign information without having to have a bunch of different columns that you're adding and taking away, and things like that. So that's a super basic kind of data entry here. Now, that didn't show you a whole lot, so I'm going to get in here and try and get you a little more information. So I know that often as schedulers, we're emailed a spreadsheet with a list of tasks, or maybe a schedule of values or something like that, or an estimate to start off the schedule from. So yes, I can go in and I can type all of these names. Or within Powerproject, I can simply copy and paste. So if this is the information I have, I can do just a copy. Not there. And I can do a paste, and it creates those tasks. Ooh, way out in July. But it creates those tasks for me with the durations I set. If I had a column there for start date, it would plug in those with a start date, or a column with predecessors, it would bring that over. So it can be a really quick, easy way, really save you time with data entry. Even if it's just a list of names, I can just copy and paste the names, but at least that's done for me. And I don't have to either individually copy each cell or type them all in myself. So along with that, I want to highlight that copy and paste is not restricted to, name or duration. So I'm going to show another view here, because again, I know when I was a scheduler, a lot of times I would get a schedule of values as my starting point for a schedule. So I'm going to delete these tasks I just created, jump to show this other view. So these are two different views of the same schedule. So I'm going to jump back real quick, and you can see that those were deleted there as well. So it's instantaneous going back and forth between them. So if I come over here, I can, as long as I have the same columns, so I've got my view set up to have the same columns as my schedule of values here, I can again just copy, paste, and not only did it create those tasks again, but it also assigned my dollar amounts to the correct cost code for each of those tasks. So it cost loaded my schedule at the same time that I created my tasks. So that can be, and this works for resources as well, so it can be a huge time saver if you have that information when you're creating your tasks. So coming back here, I want to show you then this, we talked about the semi-automatic or just ease of use for a work breakdown structure. So I can come in here, highlight tasks I want, and just click summarize. So that creates, as we can see here, summary level views in here. Obviously, I need to name them. So we will call this exterior. Whoop. This can be structure maybe. And I can come in and say, wait a minute, this was actually maybe should have been a summary level item. So I can just say, okay, I want to make that into a summary. And now exteriors here is a summary. And I can bump that out if I want it to be at the same level as these others. I can say, oh, wait, I already had an exterior. Maybe this one is actually going to be site work. Maybe I want exteriors to be up here and to be underneath site work. I can drag it up there and it's in there again, or I can outdent it. So there's a lot of flexibility. I can move tasks between sections very quickly and easily. So if I am resequencing, if I'm put things in the wrong WBS, changing how I want my WBS to be, it is very easy to make those changes without having to kind of reconfigure and recode and all of your work. It's a very quick and easy thing to do as you're working. You can say, oh, I want to group those, and then, oh, I didn't like that, let's do this way instead. So it really kind of works with you as you are doing your work. The last part about creating a schedule that I want to kind of jump in here and show is task pools. So if you're familiar with P3, they're similar to a Fragnet. They are groups of tasks that they can have codes, logic, resources, any of that. And if I just click one and drag it, it then becomes a part of my project. And all I need to do is come in here, adjust it for my projects, my specific project, durations, code, whatever I need to adjust, link it to the rest of my schedule, and it's there. So if you have a lot of similar projects or similar groupings of activities that you use regularly, you can save those within your template, and then all you need to do is adjust it for your project specifics. So we're running short on time here, so I'm going to jump forward ahead. We do have a true what you see is what you get for printing. We've got, so if I hit print preview, it will look exactly how I show with anything I have collapsed or expanded showing. If I come in here and say, oh, I didn't want my critical path to show, I can turn that off. But then when I close my print preview, you'll see that it will still be highlighted on what the schedule I'm working on. Right now I haven't assigned contractor codes to this, but there's and I can turn this off, but there's a legend to show me, my bars are color coded by contractor, and so it's showing me that here. We also have very flexible, we call them borders, but you're not limited to a header and a footer with a certain number of sections. I can put graphics on it. I can do 360 degrees around my schedule. I can add histograms in there, all sorts of things. So you really can kind of print and use this as a reporting tool or report creator just by printing. Also, I have unlimited undo and redo. So this is everything I've done since I opened this file. And I can go back and it will undo to any point in time. And I can redo. So that can be very helpful. And this works through reschedules and saving, as long as I haven't closed the file. So that can be really helpful for doing your what-if scenarios, testing out different phasing plans, things like that. Okay, so we've created a schedule. That's great. I'm going to jump back to an actual schedule that's been created, has some progress to show you how Powerproject can help as you progress the project and things don't necessarily go according to plan. We can copy progress from one project to another. So if you have two versions of your schedule running, which everybody says, why would you do that? It's, maybe you have a version that has a change order that hasn't been approved yet that's in there that you're waiting to get approved, but you're still running your as-built schedule. Once that change order schedule gets approved, you can copy the progress from your as-built onto that, or vice versa. So as long as the projects are similar with their, activity codes and things like that, that the software can recognize that they're similar, it will transfer the progress. So that can be very helpful just in kind of file management. Now, baselines, comparing baselines, hopefully is something everybody does. In P6, you are only allowed to compare 3 at a time, and you're somewhat limited in the information you can compare because in P6, baselines are not full copies of the schedule. With Powerproject P6, or with Powerproject, baselines are a full copy of the schedule, so it has any information. So anything I can see in my live schedule, I can see that information from my baseline at any time I want as well, or from any of my baselines, I should say. So I have some views created. I will show you here just to come in here. So this one is showing various durations and dates from my baseline or my contract schedule to the December update to my current one. I can come in here, I can see my different baselines are different colors. I can turn it off so I only see one line or another. I can change these columns, again, to show whatever information I want from whichever of my baselines I want. So it's very flexible. Another thing that works here is because we have multiple progress periods and not just one moving data date, I can also put columns in very similar to this, but instead of being for baselines, it would be for progress periods. So I can see what information was entered during which update. So that can really help me track, what I knew when, and how things were going up to certain points, when changes happened, things like that. So the final thing, I know I'm talking kind of fast trying to get it all in, but the final thing that I want to show here in regards to comparing and managing your project is I can also have columns that are formulas. There are some already set when you download the software in the templates that are provided, or I can create my own, similar to how you would write a formula in, say, Excel. So I can have formulas to show anything I want. So if a column doesn't exist for a specific maybe variance or comparison or something that you want to see, you can create those formulas to show. This one here, we also can do, we call them traffic light formulas that give me a graphical kind of representation of the status of things. So this is a duration variance. In my formula, I set what my parameters are for being green versus yellow or red, so I can see where my durations are changing. I can see here that those ones are getting, so I can give myself green, yellow, red flags, so it can help see where problems might be. I can create views for like an executive summary that I would send to maybe my management every month that would show, this one is a start date variance, so I can see, oh, these sections are too far behind for my own comfort. These ones are getting close. We're good here. So again, there's a lot of flexibility, and really it's a very easy to use and very easy to get the schedule to show exactly what you want to show, how you want to show it, to help you manage it better, to help do your work easier and in a more productive use of your time as well. So I know I ran a little long, but Jim, do we have any questions?
We do have a few questions, and so I'm going to rattle through a number of them rather quickly, just based so that you don't have to walk us through all the pieces owing to time. So one of the questions was early on when you first created a file. You talked about how we don't have to do the enterprise setup, the nodes. We certainly have an enterprise version. Today we're using the desktop version. We find that a lot of people don't want to be forced into one or the other, so we let you choose. So it is important to note that the Powerproject files are actually SQLite file format. So they're actually database files, makes it pretty easy to punch it into an enterprise format. We also had questions about the multiple progress periods. I'm going to go ahead and switch back to me real quick. We do have the ability to create and store progress across multiple periods. Where was I as of last month, as of this month, as of next month? And with Primavera, we're moving a data date. If you want to do it the way it's done in Primavera, you can do it that way in Powerproject. You don't have to use the multiple progress periods. I just want to make that point. There's another quick question about the views and the formatting. Megan mentioned that when you send a Powerproject file, and by the way, we have an increasing number of owners who are open to accepting Powerproject files. We have an increasing number of government entities. The Pennsylvania DOT requires Powerproject now. And then one quick side note while I'm not completing my sentence is that we also offer a free viewer. If your owner doesn't have to have a copy of Powerproject to open a Powerproject file. By the way, that viewer is very popular in the Primavera crowd because it also opens Primavera files without having to have a copy of Primavera. But the benefit is that our files are formatted. Those views that Megan showed, what opens up or doesn't open up, do we have a summary view at the top, or is everything, when you first open it, is it all, it will remember the way, the format that you saved it. So as soon as you hit save, it remembers the look and feel. You can save separate views and put them in tabs so they can quickly move amongst them. There's a lot more there to talk about, but I'm gonna pause right there owing for time, because I want to let you know that there are other ways to find out more about Powerproject. It's really hard in a quick 45, 50-minute webinar. We really kind of just scratch the surface. So as I'd mentioned at the top of the hour, we'll be having webinars twice a month. That's not the only way to get access to Powerproject. Our next webinar is not on the 4th Thursday, as I'd promised at the top of the hour. It's actually on the following Tuesday, the 29th. And that's because we'll be at the Construction CPM conference in San Diego from the 20th to 23rd. We actually are offering free training, half-day training. Again, it's not a couple of days training that you might really need if you're going to be a full user, that you can certainly avail yourself of with one of our partners. But it would give you some basic familiarity, certainly far more than we can do in a webinar, balances the bit. You do have to register for that free training. It's on the Sunday. The opening reception for the CPM conference is that Sunday evening, so you just fly in a little bit earlier, attend the half-day training. You do have to register. I'll include a link to that registration in, as well as the link to the CPM conference in the follow-up webinar, follow-up email that I send here in a few minutes. Next month, we'll talk about Microsoft Project versus Powerproject. Many people love the look and feel of Powerproject and the ability to drag and drop and reorganize, the work breakdown structure that Megan showed you today. And so people feel like it's kind of like Microsoft Project. It's not Microsoft Project. It's a far more capable full CPM tool. We'll also talk about some other features that are available, like a risk analysis on the 29th, our last one of this month. Powerproject includes a Monte Carlo analysis within the base tool. You don't have to buy another risk tool. If you've never done risk analysis because you believe it's too complex or too expensive, tune into that webinar. We'll also talk about line of balance, something that is often talked about for kind of linear repetitive scheduling. There's a lot of uses of line of balance. Line of balance is included as a part of Powerproject. Later in March, we'll talk about updating your schedule from the field. We have an app, very inexpensive, very easy to use to gather that progress right from your work site. We'll also, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see we're participating in the Associated Schools of Construction, have an increasing number of universities adopting, some very large universities using Powerproject in their curriculum now. So we're really excited. There's a competition for Region 6 and 7. The national conference will be in Denver a little bit later. AGC will be in Denver in April. You can also go to alicosoft.com. You'll see a little icon for Powerproject. Just click on that. You'll find a list of all our partners across the country that you can pick up and give a call to. You can give us a call at our toll-free number or shoot me an email at jim.dawkins@alicosoft.com. I'd like to thank Megan for getting through a lot of complicated content today. I'd like to thank all our attendees right after the first of the year for jumping in. If I didn't get to your question, look for a follow-up email, or if I answered it incompletely, don't hesitate to shoot me an email as well. Be happy to set up some one-on-one time to walk through the Powerproject scheduling tool. Again, thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you here later this month.